I had no idea the British press was so bigoted.
This one's wife, Kamala Harris, is the this one's wife of politics. Hello, I'm H.G. Tudor. Camilla Tominey, writing in the Telegraph, suggests that there are similarities between the Vice President and the Duchess of Sussex. Indeed, she states that the similarities are truly uncanny. Would Kamala Harris welcome being compared to this one's wife, or would she not? Similarly, would this one's wife smile at such a comparison, or would it annoy her? Well, before we look further into that, let's find out if there are any comparisons which are appropriate. Tominey writes, "There had always been something strangely familiar about Kamala Harris, but I couldn't quite put my finger on it until she emerged from Joe Biden's shadow after the US president announced his resignation. The penchant for spouting word salad, the slightly awkward misplaced laughter, the courting of chat show hosts, the celebrity iPhone moments, the loathing of Donald Trump, the unfortunate bullying allegations. And then the penny dropped. This one's wife, Kamala Harris, reminds me of the Duchess of Sussex." As she continues to spoon Monty Shitshow jam into jars, I wonder what Prince Harry's wife is thinking right now. It has been suggested that this one's wife one day dreamed of being the first mixed-race female president of the United States. Now, Harris could beat her to it. Pausing there, it's certainly the case that this one's wife's magical thinking and sense of entitlement would cause her to believe that she could be the first mixed-race female president of the United States, despite the fact that she lacks the ability, charm, popularity, or particular nous to get there. That's not going to stand in the way of her deluded thinking. The fact that Kamala Harris could become President of the United States and thus become the first female, first mixed-race president, would irk this one's wife because she believes that that's her position. Outwardly, this one's wife would encourage support of Kamala Harris because her narcissism would dictate that that's an appropriate thing to do for the purposes of facade management and to control the electorate. To be seen to support her as a fellow person of colour, fellow female, would be something that this one's wife's narcissism would cause her to do. This, of course, is all for facade management. Privately, if Kamala Harris were to succeed, this would infuriate this one's wife, because this one's wife believes that the position of president ought to be hers, and that she is the pioneer that is going to become the first person of colour who is president, first mixed-race individual who is president. She believes that those achievements, those accolades, ought to be reserved for her. In the same way, she thought that she was going to be Queen of England, even though, of course, logically, the chances of that happening were very slim indeed because of the position of Harry in the line of succession. This one's wife still believed that it's a position that she ought to have got. Why? Because her deluded narcissism takes her to that point. It causes her to believe that she ought to be the queen because she's special, that she's important, that she's loved, that she's popular. Hence, she made the rather unpleasant comment of, "We're only one plane crash away from the throne," or words to that effect. This, of course, is driven by her narcissism, with that sense of entitlement to believe that she should attain that position. And thus, similarly, her narcissism tells her that she ought to be the President of the United States and that she should be the first female and first person of colour that achieves that. as a first person of colour female that becomes the president. Thus, if somebody beats her to it, even though she'll have endorsed them, even though outwardly she may well have supported that individual, her narcissism will cause her to be envious. She simply cannot help it. The article continues by explaining that this one's wife was once the toast of Oprah Winfrey. Now Harris is the darling of the US chat show scene, having been salivated over by Drew Barrymore. This one's wife once actively sought out a relationship with Michelle and Barack Obama. Now they are busily endorsing Harris's presidency. Was it just me? Or did that staged phone call between the Obamas and Harris have shades of this one's wife telling Harry, Beyoncé's just texted, just as the Netflix cameras were convenient rolling? And the rhetoric. Both this one's wife and Kamala spout this sort of pseudo-spiritual psycho-babble that sounds perfectly progressive, but doesn't always make that much sense. The Duchess once declared, "Reflecting on where I came from helps me to appreciate and balance what I have now." But on reflection, might she have preferred to have come up with Harris's now infamous catchphrase, "What can be, unburdened by what has been"? I mean, if you heard this one's wife uttering these words at some point during the Sussex's 2019 tour of South Africa, you really wouldn't have batted an eyelid, so accustomed had you become to her sociology degree speaking style. Both women have spoken out in support of each other in the past. This one's wife, "We are with you," Harris tweeted when things were getting tough for the royal couple before Megxit. The Duchess, in turn, welcomed Harris's nomination as vice president a year later. This one's wife has not yet publicly endorsed Harris for president, but it can surely only be a matter of time, writes Tomine. Thus she picks up that there are similarities between the two women with regard to awkward misplaced laughter, courting of chat show hosts, celebrity iPhone moments, loathing of Donald Trump, use of word salad, unfortunate bullying allegations. So far, so similar. And it is to those bullying allegations that we go, as Charlie Spearing reports for the Daily Mail. Kamala Harris was all smiles when she arrived at Joe Biden's former Delaware campaign headquarters last Monday. She was there to lift the spirits of blindsided staffers who, after 15 months of toiling to re-elect the president, suddenly found themselves working for her. "It is my great honour to have Joe's endorsement in this race," she boasted to cheers from a crowd who were now on her payroll. But as the assembled readily applauded, some must have harboured private concerns. For behind the recent public self-branding of Harris as a kindly, jovial mamala, she has earned a nasty reputation as an alleged soul-destroying workplace bully. Who does that remind you of? Only 4 of the initial 71 staffers hired by Harris during her first year in office still remain in a job. The rest either quit or were fired, according to analysis by non-partisan watchdog Open the Books. That translates to a 92% staff turnover rate and, say critics, is a likely sign that the issues on Team Harris have more to do with her than anyone else. As we have seen previously, this one's wife has been accused of bullying staff, and as a middle mid-ranger, she portrays herself as all sweetness and light to the public. However, when it comes to behind the scenes, her narcissism will cause her to behave in a nasty bullying fashion to those that can't effectively fight or answer back. That is the way of the middle mid-range narcissist. The allegations here suggest that Kamala Harris behaves in a similar way, picking on people, causing a high staff turnover. As far back as the 2010s, when Harris served as California's Attorney General, she was allegedly known for running a toxic workplace. Barbara O'Connor, a professor at California State University, Sacramento, claimed that students who worked for Harris as interns frequently came back to her crying and saying that they felt they weren't valued. After Harris was elected in 2017 to represent California in the US Senate, working conditions reportedly did not improve. Analysis showed her office had the 9th highest staff turnover rate out of the 114 senators who served between 2017 and 2020. Congressional sources told the Mail that she would berate subordinates in expletive-laden tirades. Might this be the manifestation of heated fury, a crude and rudimentary manipulation designed to put people down, invalidate them, and belittle them for the purposes of achieving control? Even those working for Republican lawmakers allegedly got caught in the crossfire. In one instance, sources described how Harris lashed out at a roomful of Senate staffers during the highly contentious 2018 Supreme Court confirmation hearings of Brett Kavanaugh. On September the 28th of that year, as Kavanaugh's nomination moved forward despite liberal outrage over allegations he'd sexually assaulted Christine Blasey Ford 3 decades earlier, Harris and her colleagues staged a walkout from the hearings. Assertion of control by withdrawal, perhaps? Later, Harris was said to explode in anger, heated ignited fury maybe, outside the main Judiciary Committee room. Witnesses recalled Harris cursing and ordering around staffers who did not even work for her. Anyone whose staff, get the fuck out of here, she allegedly yelled. Harris's campaign did not respond to requests for comments on these allegations. Years later, amid the dramatic and rapid collapse of Harris's 2020 presidential bid, this allegedly troubling behaviour began to be leaked to the public. In a sensational resignation letter shared with the New York Times in November 2019, Harris's then State Operations Director, Kelly Mellenbacher, slammed her boss, saying, "I have never seen an organisation treat its staff so poorly." She continued, "It is not acceptable to me that we encourage people to move from Washington, D.C. to Baltimore, only to lay them off with no notice. Morale has never been lower," she added, saying there was no real plan for how Harris might win, but she hoped her departure might result in some serious consideration of our internal communications. But as Harris's failed campaign then descended into nasty blame-shifting and finger-pointing, Biden threw her a political lifeline, tapping her to be his running mate and effectively saving her skin. In June 2021, Politico spoke to 22 individuals familiar with Harris's VP office who all claimed that her team was experiencing low morale, porous lines of communication, and diminishing trust among aides and senior officials. It's not a place where people feel supported, but a place where people feel treated like shit. It was claimed that Harris was responsible because it all starts at the top. That sentiment was shared by Jill Duran, an ex-aide to Harris who worked in her Attorney General's office and quit after 5 months. "What is the common denominator through all this?" he said. "It's her." Harris's then Pence Secretary, Simone Sanders, tried to defend her boss, accusing complaining staffers of being soft. "We are not making rainbows and bunnies all day," Sanders told Politico. "What I hear is that people have hard jobs, and I'm like, welcome to the club." Just 5 months later, Sanders, a political veteran who had once worked for infamously cantankerous Vermont Senator Bernie Sanders, no relation, left Harris's office as well. Thereafter, the dam broke. Multiple staffers who worked for Harris before she was vice president told the Washington Post in December 2021 how she'd reportedly refused to prepare for public appearances and blame her aides, blame-shifting, when she then underperformed. It's clear with Harris that you're not working with somebody who was willing to do the prep and the work. Sounds a bit familiar like somebody else who doesn't like to do preparatory stuff. With Kamala, you have to put with a constant amount of soul-destroying criticism and also her own lack of confidence. So you're constantly sort of propping up a bully, and it's not really clear why. In the summer of 2021, and reported by CNN, Harris is said to have been prepped extensively by her team on how she could respond to questions about why she'd not yet visited the southern border, despite her role as White House border czar. But when the time came to deliver her answer, she botched her interview with NBC's Lester Holt. "We've been to the border," she told Holt in June of that year. "You haven't been to the border," he replied. "I haven't been to Europe," Harris clapped back with an awkward laugh. "I don't understand the points that you're making." The flippant response resulted in one of the most damaging public appearances of her entire White House tenure. She did not do another one-on-one interview for nearly a year. Potentially assertion of control by withdrawal. Thus, similarities do make an appearance with regard to this one's wife and Kamala Harris. There is a difference, of course. Harris is more intelligent than this one's wife. Harris has had an actual career compared to this one's wife. Nevertheless, there are significant similarities in their behaviour. Bullying allegations, the spouting of word salad, that much can be heard in relation to the various speeches that the two have given, the inability to deal with criticism, the expressions of heated fury, which appear to be more prevalent with Harris than they are in relation to this one's wife. Thus, there do appear to be many similarities between the two. What would either of them think in relation to a comparison? Kamala Harris, outwardly, would smile about such a comparison, but actually would be dismissive of it. She would regard this one's wife as largely an irrelevance and beneath her. This one's wife would welcome such a comparison because she believes that she ought to do something in politics, and therefore her narcissism would see that where she is compared to Kamala Harris, that's in effect people saying, you could be president too. You could be a politician. And that would find favour with her. Although she would want to win the race and get ahead of Kamala Harris, although that's not going to happen, the fact that she would be compared to a politician who is currently vice president and is likely to run for the presidency is something that would flatter this one's wife. And such a suggestion would demonstrate that whoever made the comparison is under control and is providing her with fuel. Harris, on the other hand, would not welcome such a comparison because of the unpopularity of the Duchess of Sussex. Whilst outwardly, through facade management, she would speak positively and pleasantly about such a comparison, ultimately she would dismiss it, as she would regard this one's wife as an irrelevance and a nobody, certainly compared to her. I'm H.G. Tudor. Thank you for listening.